Greetings and welcome back to another episode of the Aaron Jacobs Podcast. I'm Aaron Jacobs, a former public school music teacher in the state of Ohio, now turned health coach and teacher wellness advocate. And today I am discussing why you need to take action now on your health and the amount of money we're losing through our inaction towards our healthiest selves. So what prompted me to land on this topic for this week's episode? Well, last week I was fortunate to attend the OMEA conference for all music educators around the state. It's the first time I attended the conference since leaving the classroom. And as I walked around the conference, and this is not to shame anybody for their body shape or whatever, but I just felt like with the amount of overweight and obese people that I saw walking around, I feel like there is a distinct lack of problem awareness with a lot of people. So today's episode is meant to drive urgency toward the problems that we have with personal health and how they're actually affecting our healthcare costs, because a lot of people these days are talking about rising healthcare costs, which is fair. The problem is that we do not look inward and turn the mirror on ourselves when it comes to those rising healthcare costs. So today we're going to do that. In a previous episode, I mentioned that non-communicable diseases account for over 70% of the world's healthcare costs. Let's add some more context to that, and let's see if we can regain control of those costs through personal choice, which I think we can in many ways. Did you know that 90% of the United States' $4.5 trillion annual healthcare expenditures are for people with chronic diseases and mental health issues? 90% and $4.5 trillion is a lot. Now, I will say mental health is a real thing, and some costs I think are going to be there no matter what because of working conditions and job stressors and just the general nature of the work environment in America these days. I think we can agree on that, especially in public education. I have so many problems with how schools are structured versus other countries, how teachers are treated and how they're viewed in our country, and their lack of, essentially the lack of worth that they're perceived to have to society versus other countries that value education much more. It is absolutely criminal, but I digress. Regardless, mental health is a real thing and there's going to be some cost there. I experienced this myself last year. For those that don't know, I was on the verge of ending my own life for about 3-4 months in a row during my final year in the classroom, where I had real suicidal ideation. I knew exactly how I was going to end my life, a couple of options to where I was going to end my life. And that was on top of, I already ate pretty well. I worked out regularly. And I didn't have any sort of financial stress. When you look at it from that context, yeah, you would think that I wouldn't have any sort of major mental health crisis, but it turns out I wasn't on the right path. And so now that I'm on the right path, we've cured that, thankfully. But let's get back to making folks a little bit more problem aware. If we take a look globally, non-communicable diseases are projected to cost over $30 trillion between 2011 and 2030. That will represent nearly half of the global gross domestic product from 2010 to 2030. Half the global GDP is going toward non-communicable disease treatment. That is a staggering statistic. And often we aren't problem aware until it's too late. So let's run some numbers to make you more problem aware. So there's when the disease actually, you feel it, it starts to affect you and be a huge detriment on your life. But then there's when your lifestyle behaviors contribute to those symptoms, when that starts to build up before you even necessarily feel it. The top non-communicable diseases. It's cardiovascular disease. Heart attacks and strokes, yes, they can happen in your 50s and 60s, but artery plaque usually starts building up in your 30s and 40s. Obesity and metabolic syndrome. A lot of people talk about being insulin resistant, which let me just be frank. If you're a postmenopausal or perimenopausal woman and there's a health coach that talks about hormones and they can fix your hormones, what hormones? We don't fucking know, but they can fix your hormones. Stay the fuck away from that coach because they're full of shit. Now, I will say your blood insulin, it's a great one to get under control, but you don't have to do anything crazy to do that. Metabolic syndrome is usually diagnosed in the 30s and 40s, but complications like the aforementioned insulin resistance or even fatty liver disease start much earlier. I actually, interestingly, do have somebody currently working with me that is beating back liver disease and a high blood insulin level. Just in a few short months of us working together has basically reversed all of those symptoms. And did this person eliminate all the processed food in the world from their diet? No, they did not. Did they do any sort of diet that has a particular catchy name to it that you see broadcasting on the internet? No, they did not. Speaking of obesity and metabolic syndrome, right akin to those two is type 2 diabetes. The average age for diagnosis of type 2 diabetes is the age of 45. But now, of course, cases are rising in children and certainly adults in their 20s and 30s. Hypertension, which is high blood pressure, 45% of US adults over 20 already have that. That is almost half. No wonder we have to spend so much money on healthcare. Fatty liver disease. Once rare, it's now showing up again, as I mentioned, in people in 20s and 30s. And of course, there are some cancers that are very lifestyle linked. Your risk for those spikes after 50, but precancerous growths often start in your 40s. So I like to think of the gym and your diet and your overall levels of activity and your sleep and your hydration. Those are different ways to diversify your investments in your long-term health span and lifespan. Similar to how those of you that invest in the stock market, and frankly, if you're a teacher and you are just relying on the state teachers retirement system, you need to rethink some shit real quick. Especially if you're young, you have so much time to let compounding interest work for you. And so the earlier you start, the better off you're going to be financially. Don't just rely on your state teachers retirement system. And even if, yes, you're going to tell me, oh, well, I have this expense and that expense. Everyone can find ways to cut expenses and cut down on their lifestyle. There are always ways to do it, and it is so worth it. And to me, these different avenues of investing in your health, getting enough steps in, eating enough protein, resistance training, getting some zone 2 cardio, hydration, sleep quality, sleep quantity, all these different avenues to invest in for your health are just like stocks and mutual funds for your health span and lifespan. So the problem is a lot of people don't start until it's too late. And you see the same thing with finances as well. And unfortunately, yes, is that getting harder to do? Absolutely. Is it getting harder to invest in your health with the way things cost? Yes, absolutely. The last couple of recipe videos I posted, I have made jokes about how freaking expensive eggs are. The one I posted on the day of this recording, I filmed myself almost dropping my wallet into my saucepan because of how freaking expensive the eggs are these days. But even then, what's more expensive? Investing in good quality food now, or all the complications that come from heart disease and type 2 diabetes later in life? What's more expensive? I'm making those investments in those deposits right now, and most people don't think that far ahead, unfortunately. Educators, we're getting hit particularly hard with this, not just because of the cost. And yes, either one of two things need to happen. Teachers, we need to be paid a little bit more, especially in certain states. Or two, we need to reduce the amount of hours that teachers are actually having to work actively throughout the week. And I'm not just talking about their contracted hours. I'm talking about the amount of total hours they put in a week. You can go check out my episode on how many more hours teachers put in a calendar year versus other W-2 employees. And they're compressing a greater workload, the more hours worked, into fewer weeks of the year, which of course leads to why some of these things with chronic diseases, I think, are going to hit teachers even harder than the average person. The chronic stress that you are under as a teacher leads to weight gain, high blood pressure, metabolic dysfunction. You're like a lot of people, you might be sitting for long periods of time, and sitting in many cases is just as bad as smoking. And some doctors even think it's worse for you. Not planning your meals well enough and just eating whatever the cafeteria provides. And oh man, I have been planning an episode on cafeteria food and the crap that we serve kids these days. It is absolutely criminal. If you want to make a good investment in America's future health, and you want to put more money towards education, how about we fund single ingredient whole foods to be prepared in these kitchens? That's a whole nother episode. The burnout that teachers experienced, I experienced, it affected my sleep, and poor sleep combined with a lack of exercise. Weight gain, of course, we all know is going to increase risk for diabetes, obesity, heart disease, not to mention all the other non-communicable chronic diseases that I mentioned earlier. I think we all know what to do, but it's a matter of doing it. It's about having the accountability and also having a way to fit it into your life that actually makes it sustainable and enjoyable. And for me, I do my best as someone who now also creates content. I want to try to give everybody the best, most honest, free advice without holding anything back. That's why I do this podcast. That's why I make content. That's why I make recipe videos. I love making the recipe videos. They're fun. But a lot of people don't find healthy living a pleasurable experience. I do. I absolutely do. I love the way I feel. I love the food that I get to eat. I love what I can do with my body. I love the fact that I'm going to have a long and healthy life ahead of me, and that even though I just turned 39 last week, I know that I can have another very long time to work and I have the gift to now work in fields and things and projects that I want to do that are giving my life a lot of meaning. And they're things that I hope I never fully retire from. And I know that I'm going to be healthy enough to continue to do those things, maybe less often as I'm in my 60s, certainly. I mean, even no matter how healthy you are, we know everybody's going to slow down a little bit. But I never want to fully retire from those things. People that fully retire from things, often their quality of life diminishes greatly and causes mental health issues. You lose purpose. So right now, I'm in the process as I restructure my entire life. I am building for a long and healthy life that I never have to retire from. And that is truly a blessing. I hope that my path is going to help many of you, especially teachers, craft that vision for yourself. That being said, what can you start doing today? Let's just recap briefly. I think we all know to do these things, but how to do them pleasurably in a way that fits into your life, your preferences as a human individually. That's where the challenge comes in, the implementation of these things. But let's talk about them. Number one, processed foods. Over 60% of the typical American diet is ultra-processed foods. Stuff that has a lot of ingredients on it in the middle of the grocery store that can live on a shelf for forever. Now, I think you guys know, if you followed me for a while or any of my content, you know that I'm not against processed foods. I'm not even against ultra-processed foods. I'm not even against artificial sweeteners. I don't think you should eat something if it makes you feel bad, if you're allergic to it, or you're uncomfortable eating it. That's it. If it's something you enjoy eating, there can be a way to integrate it into your life. That being said, around that, most of your diet, especially if you are just getting your bearings with recalibrating your health, it would be good for a lot of people to do a processed food detox entirely for at least 30 to 60 days. It just is going to clear your palate. You need to stop seasoning your food so much with so much salt, pepper. You need to get the taste for real food back. So eat single ingredient whole foods that are perishable as often as possible and make them 80 to 90% of your total calories every single day. Once you become a master of recalibrating your palate, it might be easier to integrate those processed foods back and still not put on weight. But most people in America need to get a bearing on what real food tastes like and recalibrate their palate. The second most important part here is going to be being sedentary. Sitting is the new smoking. So we have to just get up and move more. And frankly, that doesn't necessarily mean intense, vigorous exercise all the time. Most people just need to move more. But just starting out, if you are severely overweight, just being able to walk more is so important. And that doesn't mean jumping from whatever steps you have right now to 10,000 or 12,000 steps a day. It's just increasing it by 1,000 per day over the course of weeks at a time, slowly, to get your body to be able to handle that level of activity. And honestly, everybody should be strength training for like 30 minutes, 3 times a week. That's my recommendation. Some people say you can get away with less than that. I know Dr. Mike Israetel said that if you do 2 really focused dumbbell workouts that actually progressively overload and you did that twice per week, you would still be just fine. I think 3 times per week. That's what most of the people in my program are doing, is strength training 3 times per week. And it has given us some fantastic results. So walking more, strength training, and then, yes, the aerobic piece is another great investment you can make that I'm very, very big on. And yes, those 2 things, they are obvious, but how to manage those things and integrate them into your life can be a challenge. That's why we coaches exist. We try to make that process easier for you. Knowing how to balance a healthy meal that actually tastes good, that fits your taste preferences, getting that specific, that's what we coaches are here for. We're here to help you with that. Teachers, if we don't correct this, and this is the core of my mission, founding the fitness initiative for teachers, which will be launching this year, we have to stop as teachers, as the adults in the classroom. We must be the ones to stop the unhealthy behaviors that are leading to greater and greater dysregulated health and rising healthcare costs that are out of control. Yes, the food system is fucked up. Yes, the way insurance companies bill things is fucked up. But the thing that people keep forgetting to talk about, as I said at the beginning of the episode, the thing that people are not willing to do is turn the mirror on themselves and look at how they can do their part to prevent their costs. Is it harder to do now than before? Yes. Do things cost more than before? Yes. But if you aren't even trying to move the needle and you just keep making excuses, well, then you're doomed to probably experience one or more of those non-communicable chronic diseases at some point in your life. I refuse to be a part of that statistic, and I do everything I can to prevent being that. That being said, you don't have to change everything overnight. I don't have people that just join with me go from never lifting a weight to back squatting with a barbell. That's just stupid. That's a recipe for injury. That's a recipe for all kinds of just not good things. So knowing how to manage gradually ramping up your activity, how to move well, again, that's why I'm here. That's why coaches exist. We're here to help demystify that process of how to get healthy and how to make it more pleasurable and more enjoyable. And that is what I love to do, is when I see people make progress, but also enjoy making the progress through the process. There's nothing more rewarding than that. And just remember, your health isn't just about living longer. It's about living better. And if you start now, you can make great investments in your health, and you'll have a whole heck of a lot of things to look forward to much later in life. Thank you all very much for listening today to the Aaron Jacobs podcast, where we broke down why healthcare costs are out of control and what we might be able to do as individuals, and specifically why we as teachers should take action now. Everyone take care and be well.